Hey, we're with MLB.com and MLBpipeline.com. Senior writer Jim Callis. The draft is fast approaching. The futures game, new number one prospect Jackson Holiday on the MLB Pipeline Top 100 this week. There's a lot going on as always, Jim. What else is new? But one thing that is new for the Orioles is for the first time in a while since 2018, they will not pick in the top five, and for the first time since 2017, when they took DL Hall 21, they will pick as low as 17. So that's kind of new and different here in Birdland. Um, Before we get into some names at 17, what kind of reputation is Mike Elias and his staff building in the draft? They've had four in Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, they've obviously done well. I mean, you can argue when you're picking one, two, five, and one, you should do pretty well. They obviously got Gunnar Henderson with their second pick back in 2019. But no, I mean, I think it's not just the drafting; it's the development. I mean, guys are coming in the system; they're getting better. Heston Kjerstad, obviously, a guy we've talked a lot about over the years, Steve, and took forever his career to get going. They've got him back to where he was, like he's everything they hoped he would be. You have later round picks like Kobe Mayo, who granted was an overslot signing. Joey Ortiz, their top 100 picks. Jordan Westberg, I guess, was a sandwich pick. Does that sound right? Like
Yeah,
he's
30.
obviously developed well. So, yeah. So, I mean, they have obviously had a very advantageous draft situation, but they've made very good picks. They made very good picks later in the draft. And like I said, I mean, I think the fact that it just seems like it's one player after another, these guys get better, um, is a tribute to their development staff too.
So they will pick number 17 in round one. The slot amount, which you guys have put out a while ago, is about 4.17 million for that pick. Then they have 53, 63, 86, and 100. So five of the top 100, a chance to add more talent to Birdland. Jim, some of the mock drafts, and I believe your latest has them taking Florida right-handed pitcher Hurston Waldrep, number 19 on your top 250 that you guys just redid as well of draft prospects. What about Waldrop?
Yeah, he's a guy who came on in the postseason, really strong. His best back-to-back starts of the year were probably in the regionals and the super regionals to help Florida get to the College World Series. He wasn't as sharp with his control in the finals, where they lost to LSU in 3 games. But it's an interesting year for college pitching because you got Paul Skeens, who I think is the best prospect in the draft, probably the best pitching prospect, maybe ever in the draft. You could argue that. And then you've got a couple guys in Rhett Lauder and Chase Dollander of Tennessee, Lauder from Wake Forest, who are probably going to go in the top 10 picks. And then Waldrop's probably the only other college pitcher who's going in the first round. The depth falls off after him. And he's interesting. Like there's things to like and there's things to wonder about a little bit. I mean, he throws very hard. It's mid-90s to upper 90s. He's got a splitter that's a tremendous pitch that gets a ton of swings and misses. Now, the splitter's a chase pitch. Splitter's not a pitch that guys usually throw for strikes. And so you wonder in the back of your mind, against better hitters, are they going to lay off it more? He's not always consistent control command-wise. He never really has been. There is some effort in the delivery. I mean, so there's reliever risk. Although, I mean, as I said, you could probably say reliever risk on just about anybody in the draft. Maybe not Paul Skeens and Rhett Lauder. But I think, we're talking about a different Orioles team now here, Steve. I mean, for the last 4 years, they've been picking at the very top of the draft. They're rebuilding. You're theoretically taking the best guy or the best guy who allows you to save some money and spend it later, like they did with Kjerstad and Colton Cowser, both of whom look like terrific picks. And you're rebuilding. It was like there was no timetable per se. You don't ever really draft for need in the draft. You certainly don't at the top of the draft when you're rebuilding. Now, I mean, Orioles look to me, it's too early to call them a lock, right? But I mean, they look like they're a playoff team to me this year in the American League. If they don't catch the Rays, they look like a pretty good chance to be a wild card. This window of contention looks like it's going to be open. I don't know if you can ever project more than 5 years in the future, but like at least for the next 5 years. So we're trying to win now. We're not building. It's all about winning. And you're not going to just draft for need, but we both know what do the Orioles need more than anything else? They need pitching.
Right.
And Waldrop's a guy that, I mentioned reliever risk. Well, maybe he doesn't work out as a starter. Maybe he wants to be in your closer. Maybe he's throwing 97 with a nasty split, and that's your closer long term. So I just think he makes a lot of sense. I've heard that buzz. That's about the area of the draft where he fits in. Obviously, the big thing at 17 is at the top of the round. When the Orioles pick at the top of the draft, not that they ever told anybody who they were taking. We were guessing, but you kind of knew, like last year, okay, it's Jackson Holiday or it's Drew Jones. Or in 2019, it's Rutschman. They could claim it's not Rutschman, but it's Rutschman. And then the other years, you had a very small pool of names. Here, you don't know who might fall to him. But if the draft proceeds according to chalk, which it never does, but like for the sake of our purposes, if we think the guys who are going to go ahead of him do, I think Waldrop makes a lot of sense to him there.
And go at your own risk when you try to figure out what the Orioles are thinking about the draft, because they just don't tip their hand, I don't think, for local guys or national guys. And now you have
Nobody
the
knows.
added element of, Jim, and you've already mentioned this, the rebuilding is over, the winning has begun, and they're loaded with prospects, especially at the higher levels. So there are people who now try to analyze that. Will that impact how they draft this year because the situation is different? I guess we're all waiting to find that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, ideally, in a perfect world, you would get a pitcher, but you're not going to force it. You're not going to take a pitcher who doesn't belong at 17. But it would be great for the Orioles if there was a pitcher there. And that's why I keep coming back to Waldrop. But, I mean, the bottom line is if a guy falls to them that they think is better and he's not a pitcher, they're going to take that guy probably. Or I mean, they could theoretically, let's say you don't love anybody in particular. You could cut a deal at 17 and I'm just making up a number, sign a guy for 3.5, and that gives you more money to play with later. So a lot of options are in play. I'll put it this way: it was hard enough guessing who they're going to pick when they picked 1 or 2. We have no idea who the Orioles are going to take at 17. We have no idea.
That is fair and accurate. Anybody that says anything differently is not telling the truth. So, Jim, here's an intriguing name. First baseman, right-handed pitcher, Bryce Eldridge, Madison High School, Vienna, Virginia. So he's kind of in their area, sort of. Lefty hitter, number 23 on your board right now. Is he a two-way player in the pros?
Well, no, and it's funny. I'll throw on you. I'm from the area. That's my arch rival high school. I'm an Oakton Cougar, so I can't root for Bryce Eldridge. I'm joke. I actually ran into the combine, and we talked a little bit about that. But it's crazy. It's 2 of the last 3 years they've had a top guy because James Triantos a couple years ago came out of Madison and went to the Cubs. He's a two-way player, and he is a two-way prospect. Also, pitcher, he had an ankle injury. His stuff wasn't as sharp. He's done both for Team USA, the high school team, the 1800 team. He's not going to be a two-way guy as a pro. He's going to get drafted, I think, like 99%, or even, I won't say 100%, 99.9% he's getting drafted as a hitter. Guys like him more as a hitter. The whole two-way thing, he's a legitimate two-way prospect. But in the days before Shohei Ohtani, there were no like real two-way prospects. I mean, Brandon McKay was a guy a couple of years ago, and he got hurt and didn't really pan out. And there's some guys who've messed around with it. I think the two-way guy is more realistic when you're in pro ball and maybe you're like a reliever / bench player and you do both. It's too hard to do both full time. It's impossible. Like, well, I'm digressing. Shohei Ohtani is the most talented player in the history of baseball. Like, Babe Ruth didn't do this stuff. And if Babe Ruth wasn't playing against integrated competition with pitch labs and balls moving all over the place, like, Shohei Ohtani makes this look so much easier than it is. Just the physical conditioning and the training you have to do to be able to do both is insane. So no, like Eldridge, I do think he's in the Orioles mix. One of the better high school bats around, but it's impossible. You can't do both as a pro unless you're an unbelievable player, or like I said, kind of a maybe Michael Lorenz and Christian Bethencourt, type of bench dude. But he's not going to do both as a pro. Like there's just there's no way. But yeah, he'll get drafted as a hitter, and he is a name I do hear with the Orioles.
Let me throw out 2 other names, get a quick thought if you might, because they've both been kind of thrown in that Oriole mix by various people. Stanford shortstop Tommy Troy and Florida Atlantic first baseman outfielder Nolan Shanuel.
Yeah, well, I'll talk about Troy first, and I'm also going to throw in let's throw in another local guy, Maryland shortstop Matt Shaw. He and Tommy Troy. There's a lot of college hitters. There's a group of about 8 or 10 college hitters. After you get past, Dylan Cruz, from LSU and Wyatt Lang from Florida at the top, maybe Kyle Teal from Virginia. There's a group that are bunched together, and they could go in kind of different orders, but Shaw from Maryland, Troy from Stanford are rising. They could both go before the Orioles. One or both of them might be there. They get past the Orioles. You can see the Brewers and Rays go 18-19, take them right away. But Troy's an offensive shortstop. Probably moves to second base as a pro. Shaw probably moves to second base as a pro. Shaw was MVP of the Cape Cod League last summer. Troy had a good Cape. They're both good players. They're both kind of plug and play guys. I think are going to move pretty quickly because they can hit. You don't draft for need. It would be interesting. That's what we need, Steve. We need them to draft Tommy Troy or Matt Shaw, and then we can ask ourselves, okay, where are these guys going to play in the infield? Like they're going to play like a 6-man infield. But again, you take the best players and things work themselves out. But yeah, I've heard both those names. And then Shinuel had, he had the best numbers of anybody in college baseball this year. I mean, the guy hit 444, 612, 864. He walked more than 5 times as much as he struck out. And I think he got hit by more pitches than he struck out. I know he has more homers and he may have more stolen bases, even though he's not a runner, than he struck out. So he had an unbelievable year. All the teams that are looking into performance love him. It's good data. First base only. Well, maybe chance to play left field, but probably first base only. But I have heard his name also with the Orioles there at 17. Now we've talked. Is that all college players we've talked about there? Have we mentioned
except for Eldridge.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you hear names like Arjun Namal, who's a Florida shortstop, Ada Miller, who's a Florida third baseman, as potential guys who, if they're there, could be in the Orioles mix. Chase Davis, the outfielder from Arizona, he's a college guy, but yeah, it's all kinds of names bouncing around there at 17.
Yeah, and Shaw, you mentioned from Maryland, is number 16 on your board, so he's right in their range with how you guys have him, ranked on your big board right now. And there are people who think because it's so heavy at the top in their system that a high school kid makes a lot of sense. So we'll see come July 9th what it really means to the Orioles when the time comes. So, Jim, I want to ask you about Jackson Holliday moving to number 1 on the MLB pipeline, top 100 this week. That was quite amazing. And I want to ask you about, and obviously you guys and your staff had a lot of discussions on this, I'll bet. I mean, he passed Ellie De La Cruz, a guy who's listed with 3 like 70 or 80 grade tools, tearing up the major leagues. And now Jackson Holliday tops him. I mean, was it because De La Cruz will soon run out of eligibility, or were there other things going on?
No, I mean, we try to play this straight. Because we're going to do that. Why even have Ellie De La Cruz on the list? So it's based on, we update the top 100. We do one in preseason. We update a couple times in the regular season before we do a total update after the draft toward the end of July. And it's at that moment. So, like, Ellie De La Cruz counts as a prospect. We're counting Ellie De La Cruz as a prospect. And I know it's funny. We took, as you might suspect, a lot of abuse. Like, what are you guys doing? Ellie De La Cruz, this and that. He's playing great. The Reds are playing great. The tools are amazing. You can see him on a nightly basis. So, yeah, I mean, if you're like people, we did take some abuse on that. Nothing is Ellie De La Cruz. And look, there's no wrong answer. Like, if you want to say, like, someone wants to say Ellie De La Cruz, be like, yeah, you could easily make that case. But I just think, Jackson Holliday may not be, 70, 80 speed and arm and power. But I'll throw out there, he's a better hitter. No doubt in my mind, Jackson Holliday's a better hitter than Ellie. And I love Ellie De La Cruz. Jackson Holliday might, when all's said and done, we're talking about a guy who's already in Double-A at 19, more walks and strikeouts, pretty much every level he's been. Oh, I'm sorry, he's in high A, but he can
Right.
push for promotion to Double-A soon, is what I was trying to say. Jackson Holliday is probably the best hitting prospect in the minor leagues. He might be 2 grades better hitter than Ellie De La Cruz. He might not have 70 power, but I'll bet it's 60 power. And maybe we're selling. Like, look at his dad. He's going to be a pretty big guy when he's done growing. He's not a 70 or 80 runner, but it's a 60 runner. He has great instincts. He gets the most out at speed. And I think it's probably 60 arm. And he might have a better chance of sticking the shortstop than Ellie De La Cruz. So it was tough. And again, I won't argue anybody wants to go with Ellie De La Cruz. I'll bet on the guy who's got the better bat. And I think not that Ellie De La Cruz has a bad bat. I think Ellie De La Cruz has a average-ish bat, maybe tick above average with some wonderful physical tools. I think Jackson Holiday's got plus bat, might be an 80 bat. It's a pretty great bat. And the other tools are like 55s and 60s, and I'll take that guy. Like, no disrespect to Ellie De La Cruz, but it's. I mean, I know we talk all the time, Steve, and can't remember his preseason. I mean, I told you I thought he'd be the number one prospect in baseball by the end of the season. I didn't think by June, and he's done it. And I wasn't trying to make a self fulfilling prophecy there, but I mean, it is unbelievable. I can't imagine you've ever had a franchise that within it hasn't even been a calendar year. You have the number one prospect in baseball, Natalie Rutschman. He graduates, and soon thereafter, Gunnar Henderson's the number one prospect in baseball, and he graduates, and soon thereafter, now Jackson Holiday's the number one prospect in baseball. That is unbelievable. I don't think any. I can't imagine what franchise would ever have had a run of three guys like that, even within like a 2 or 3 year period, let alone a calendar year.
Yeah, and then you mentioned in this interview, Gunner was the number 42nd pick. So that isn't like you hit on three number ones here. But two are number ones, of course, but not every number one draft pick goes to number one on these lists. So well done, I guess, by the Orioles. And Jim, we all know this. Jackson Holiday's 19. He looks 16, but his maturity is 26. That's the key number. This kid handles himself like a much older player. We saw it in Major League Spring Training. He gets everything. He knows exactly what's going on in high A. He gets why he's still there. He understands he'll probably won't be there. He'll be in Bowie later. And he just gets it with all that talent. It's quite a package.
Yeah, it's funny. We always harp on bloodlines in baseball, and I think it does matter more than other sports because you're talking about the daily grind. I think two reasons. One, I think baseball is a sport of repetitions. I mean, yes, natural physical ability matters, but being able to hit, being able to repeat pitches, you learn by doing that over and over. And I think of Jackson Holiday, he reminds me of Bobby Witt Jr. in terms of those instincts and makeup and the bloodlines. Bobby Witt was a longtime big leaguer. Jackson's dad, Matt, was a longtime big leaguer, 7-time All-Star. And so these guys grew up around the game, and they've been hitting forever. And they have an idea when they get into pro ball what they're facing, what the grind's going to be like. If you go 0 for 12 over a 3-day stretch, it's not the end of the world. They just get it. They're very comfortable in their own skin. I mean, like you were alluding to, I'm sure you've interviewed Jackson. I mean, it's like interviewing a 25-year. Like, he's not faced by anything. We had him on our podcast about a month ago, and he was awesome, just like Bobby Witt was awesome when we had him on, at a very young age. And it's like, it's an extra tool. Like, the bloodlines do matter. Like, it's not a coincidence why you see so many sons of big leaguers become good big leaguers. And like, the crazy thing is, I think he's 2 years away, but Jackson's got a little brother, Ethan, who some guys swear might be better than Jackson. Jackson tells you he's more physical than Jackson was at the same stage. Like, the Orioles are probably too good now. They're not going to get a shot at Ethan Holiday. But there's another Holiday coming who might be pretty special, too.
Unbelievable if that kid goes 1-1-2 or even high up. I mean, wow, what a baseball family. Jim, very last topic. The trade deadline's approaching. The Orioles have all this prospect capital, if you will. How much are the prospects coveted now? And how does it set up the Orioles if they do want to act?
Yeah, I mean, it does. And prospects are coveted. And like, what helps the Orioles is it's not just the prospects are coveted and they have a bunch of good ones. They have all their top guys except for Holiday, who's not going anywhere, are double A, triple A major leagues. So it's not like you're projecting, like Samuel Basallo is a very interesting prospect, but he's 18. He's in low A. He's 2 or 3 years away. So you're not, like, when you're on the trade market, people are interested in Samuel Basallo, but there's a difference between what he is now and what he may become. So you don't get full credit for what he may become because he has a while to get there. But Jackson Holiday, he's not going anywhere. But Colton Cowser, Heston Kjerstad, I mean, they have more outfielders to know what they do with. You theoretically could part with one of those guys. You may not be, and you're talking about guys who are probably ready for the big leagues right now or almost immediately, and they're valuable because not only are they talented, pay them basically minimum salary for 3 years until they're arbitration eligible. You have a lot of control over them. Jordan Westbrook just got to the big leagues. Joey Ortiz has been in the big leagues. Connor Norby's bounced between second base and the outfield. We were mentioned before, I think, like, they can't play all these infielders in the middle infield. So, like, some of those guys are going to be easy to trade. Kobe Mayo is a AAA, slugging the ball around at 21. And I mean, I kind of feel I don't even know what they're gonna do with all their infielders, but like you might have Holiday short, Gunnar Henderson to third, so maybe Kobe Mayo plays first. But like you could trade two or three of those guys and still have more hitters than you know what to do with. And that doesn't even count. You got Dylan Beavers, who's an outfielder who's less further along. Kate Povich is certainly interesting. I don't know if I'd see them trading pitching, but they have enough depth, Steve, and these guys are close to being ready. That, and I'll be honest. I mean, you mentioned all the stuff that's going on right now: the draft, the futures game. We're updating our top 100 list. Like I was just at the draft combine. I have not been paying attention to the trade deadline, so I cannot tell you who's on the market. My head would explode if I had more responsibilities added. But like, I mean, any pitcher who's on the market, and that's what the Orioles need is pitching. The Orioles should be able to make a run at that guy. Like, I'm not saying that they can, like the Dodgers are a loaded farm system too, and there's others. But like, if they want to go get like any like who's I don't even know who the biggest pitchers on the market. They have the talent.
Giolito's a name you hear out there.
Stroman, like Marcus Stroman. Like they can eat like they can go get that guy, and they're not mortgaging their future. I mean, I did laugh. My Twitter feed's blown up for some reason the last 2 days. Somebody asked me if the Cardinals were looking to trade Paul Goldschmidt, could they get Jackson Holiday? And I just stayed out of it. And like my other followers are like beating up this poor guy for like they're not trading Jackson Holiday for 35-year-old Paul Goldschmidt, but like you could trade a Heston Kjerstad, you could trade a Joey Ortiz or whatever to go get a guy who could pitch at the front of your rotation.
After the futures game, all-star game, draft, it's going to be a fascinating few weeks, and it's going to quickly turn to the trade deadline, and the rumors will start flying. But Jim, as always, unbelievable insights. Loved your work as always. Look forward to watching you often over the next few weeks on various projects. And thanks so much for taking time today.
Steve, it's always great talking to you. It's fun talking about the Orioles. I love reading your work too. I need you to figure out who's going 17, so I only have to figure out the other 27 picks in the first round. So we got a few.
If I get that information and would be allowed to leak it to one person in the world, it would be you. And now
I would appreciate it.
Now, when you have it, everybody knows you didn't get it from me, probably.
There you go. We'll keep it secret. So, but yeah, no, it's great talking to you, Steve.